The icy December winds howled through the canyons of Wasco, Wyoming Territory, 1867. As Zara Sinclair clutched her threadbare shawl tighter around her swollen belly, her red-rimmed eyes scanning the notice that would seal her fate. By order of territorial court, the indebted woman Zara Sinclair with child to be sold to highest bidder for term of servitude until debts paid in full. Auction to commence at noon, December 7th. Her trembling fingers traced the words that reduced her to property, to be bartered away like cattle at the upcoming winter market. Zara had known hardship before, but nothing like this. 6 months pregnant and newly widowed, her husband Matthew's gambling debts had come due the moment they'd lowered his coffin into the frozen ground. The creditors had given her 30 days to pay. 30 days that had vanished like morning mist while she'd sold everything they owned: the small homestead, their meager livestock, even her wedding band, and still it wasn't enough. Not nearly enough. Now, as she trudged through the muddy streets of Wasco, the weight of her unborn child pressed against her spine, a constant reminder of what she stood to lose. In the Wyoming Territory, debt servitude could last years, and there was no guarantee she'd be allowed to keep her baby once it arrived. Some buyers wanted workers, not mothers. "Please, Mr. Hastings," she begged, standing before the banker's polished desk. "Just a little more time. I've written to my cousin in Denver. Your time is up, Mrs. Sinclair." Terrence Hastings barely looked up from his ledger, his silver spectacles catching the lamplight. "The auction proceeds tomorrow as planned. Your husband borrowed against your property, your labor, and yes, potentially guardianship of any children. The law is quite clear." Zara's legs nearly buckled beneath her. "My baby is all I have left," she whispered. "Then you should have chosen a husband who didn't stake your future on cards and whiskey," Hastings replied, finally meeting her gaze with cold indifference. "Good day, Mrs. Sinclair." The boarding house where she'd been allowed to stay until the auction was quiet when she returned, the other women avoiding her eyes. Debt auctions weren't uncommon in frontier towns, but they carried shame nonetheless. Zara sat on the edge of her narrow bed, hands cradling her belly as the baby kicked, strong and insistent. "We'll be all right," she promised, though the words rang hollow in the empty room. Somehow. Dawn broke cold and clear over Wasco, golden light spilling across the snow-capped mountains that rimmed the valley. The town was already bustling, word of the auction drawing ranchers, miners, and townspeople alike. Some came to bid, others merely to witness the spectacle. Zara remained in her room until the last possible moment, braiding her chestnut hair and donning the cleanest of her 2 remaining dresses, a faded blue calico that strained across her middle. The sheriff himself, a gruff man named Jenkins, came to escort her to the auction block, a simple wooden platform erected outside the courthouse. "Don't cause no fuss, Mrs. Sinclair," he advised, not unkindly. "Best to accept what comes with dignity." The crowd parted as they approached, whispers following in their wake. Zara kept her eyes fixed on the platform, refusing to acknowledge the mixture of pity and curiosity in the onlookers' faces. She recognized most the blacksmith, the general store owner, wives of ranchers who'd employed her for laundry work. Faces she'd seen every day for the 3 years she'd called Wasco home. Sheriff Jenkins led her onto the platform where Mr. Hastings waited, documents in hand. The banker cleared his throat, addressing the gathered crowd. "By order of the territorial court, we auction today the debt servitude of Mrs. Zara Sinclair, widow, age 24, in good health save for her current condition." He gestured dismissively at her swollen belly. "Skilled in cooking, cleaning, sewing, and general household management. The servitude term will satisfy the outstanding debt of $342, with interest accruing at territorial standard. Bidding begins at $100. Zara stared at the distant mountains, imagining herself somewhere far away, anywhere but here. A man in the front row, Peterson, who owned the largest cattle operation west of town, raised his hand. 100. 120, called another voice, belonging to the widow Douglas who ran the hotel. The bidding continued, each call sounding like nails in a coffin to Zara's ears. $200. 250. Hastings looked pleased as the amount climbed. 300 from Mr. Peterson, the banker announced, scanning the crowd. "Do I hear 320? A hush fell over the assembly as a man pushed his way to the front, a stranger, tall and broad-shouldered, his face shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat. He wore the dust of the trail, from his worn leather boots to the faded bandana at his throat. A cowboy by the look of him, though he carried himself with unusual confidence. $342, the stranger said, his voice deep and clear, plus whatever interest has accrued to date. Hastings blinked in surprise. "Sir, that's not how the bidding—" "I'm not bidding," the man interrupted, reaching into his coat to withdraw a leather pouch that clinked with the unmistakable sound of gold. "I'm settling her debt. In full." The crowd murmured in confusion. Zara found herself staring at the stranger, his features becoming clearer as he tilted his head back, strong jaw dark with stubble, keen eyes the color of a summer storm, a thin scar running along one cheekbone. He looked to be in his early 30s, weathered by sun and hardship. Hastings sputtered, "This is most irregular, is it?" The stranger's voice remained level, but something in his tone silenced the banker. "Check your ledger, Hastings. The law states that debts can be paid by any party at any time with proper documentation of transfer." He withdrew a folded paper from his pocket. "I have that documentation signed by Judge Morris in Cheyenne. You'll find it all in order." Sheriff Jenkins stepped forward, examining the paper the man provided. After a moment, he nodded to Hastings. "It's legitimate, Terrence." "Judge's seal and everything." The banker's face darkened with barely concealed rage. "Very well," he bid out. $342 plus $18 interest to date, total of $360. The stranger counted out the exact amount in gold coins, placing them in Hastings' reluctantly outstretched hand. The banker hurriedly scribbled a receipt, practically flinging it at the cowboy before gathering his things. "The debt is cleared," Hastings announced tersely. "Mrs. Sinclair is released from obligation." Without another word, he stormed away, the crowd parting before him. Zara stood frozen on the platform, unable to comprehend what had just happened. The stranger tucked the receipt into his coat, then finally looked directly at her. Something in his gaze, not pity, but something deeper, more complex, made her breath catch. "Madam," he said with a slight nod, touching the brim of his hat. Then, to her astonishment, he turned and began walking away through the dispersing crowd. "Wait." Zara called, gathering her skirts and carefully descending the platform steps. "Please wait." The stranger paused, turning back as she approached. "Why?" she asked when she reached him, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why would you do this? What do you want from me?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Nothing, madam, not a thing. I don't understand. You can't just— people don't just—" She struggled to find the words, her hand instinctively cradling her belly as the baby shifted. "The name's Vincent Rawlins," he said, offering his hand. After a moment's hesitation, she took it, his calloused palm warm against her cold fingers. "And I reckon people can do whatever they've a mind to, especially when it's the right thing." "You don't even know me," Zara pressed, searching his face for some hidden motive. "I know enough," Vincent replied. "Know what it's like to be at the mercy of men like Hastings. Know it's no place for a woman expecting." He glanced around at the townsfolk still lingering, watching their exchange. "You got somewhere to stay tonight, Mrs. Sinclair?" The question brought her back to harsh reality. The boarding house had only allowed her to remain until the auction, assuming she'd be leaving with whoever purchased her debt. I'm not certain," Vincent nodded as though he'd expected this answer. "There's a room reserved for you at the hotel. Paid through the week, should give you time to sort things." Zara blinked back sudden tears. "Mr. Rawlins, I cannot accept. Already done," he interrupted gently. "And it's Vince, if you don't mind." "Zara," she found herself responding, "if we're to be informal." He smiled then, a real smile that transformed his face and made him look younger. "Well then, Zara, I'd be obliged if you'd let me walk you to the hotel. People tend to talk less when there's a man involved, and I expect you've had enough of being the subject of gossip for one day." She couldn't argue with his logic, though everything about the situation felt surreal. This morning she'd awakened facing servitude, separation from her child, perhaps even worse. Now she stood free, her debt cleared by a stranger who asked nothing in return. They walked in silence through Wasco's main street, Zara acutely aware of the stares following them. Vincent kept a respectful distance, close enough to make his companionship clear but not so close as to suggest impropriety. "You're not from around here," Zara observed as they approached the hotel. It wasn't a question. "Just passing through," he confirmed. "On my way to my brother's ranch near Jackson. Winter came early this year, slowed my travel." "Divine timing, it seems," she murmured. Vincent's expression grew serious. "Mrs. Sinclair, Zara, I should tell you that I knew your husband, not well, but our paths crossed." Zara stopped walking, her heart suddenly pounding. "You knew Matthew? We worked the same cattle drive last spring, south from Montana to the railhead in Cheyenne." Vincent removed his hat, running a hand through dark hair streaked with premature silver at the temples. "He spoke of you often, proudly." A complex mix of emotions washed over Zara: grief, anger, confusion. "If that were true, he wouldn't have gambled away our future," she said, her voice tight. "I can't speak to his choices," Vincent acknowledged. "Only know that when word reached me of his passing and your situation, I couldn't stand by." They had reached the hotel's entrance. Zara turned to face him fully, studying the man who had so unexpectedly altered her fate. "Thank you doesn't seem adequate, Mr. Rawlins. It's more than enough." He replaced his hat. "The room's in your name. I'll be moving on tomorrow at first light." "So soon?" The question escaped before she could stop it, surprising them both. A flicker of something regret perhaps crossed his face. "Best that way. Like I said, people talk. Your reputation's been through enough." He was right, of course. A pregnant widow suddenly in the company of a strange man would set tongues wagging faster than a prairie fire. Still, the thought of him leaving, of facing her uncertain future alone again, sent a chill through her that had nothing to do with the December air. "I wish you safe travels then," she said formally, extending her hand. Vincent took it, his touch lingering just a moment longer than necessary. "And I wish you better days ahead, Zara Sinclair." With that, he tipped his hat and walked away, his tall figure soon lost among the afternoon crowd. Zara watched until he disappeared, then entered the hotel with a strange heaviness in her chest. The widow Douglas greeted her with surprising warmth, leading her to a small but comfortable room at the back of the building. "That cowboy of yours," Mrs. Douglas said as she showed Zara the room. "He paid for meals too, 3 a day right here in our dining room." "He's not my cowboy," Zara corrected gently, "just a kind stranger." Mrs. Douglas raised an eyebrow. "Kind strangers are rare enough in these parts, especially ones who carry that much gold." She patted Zara's hand. "Rest now, dear, you've had quite a day." Alone in the room, Zara sank onto the bed, a real bed, not the narrow cot she'd been sleeping on at the boarding house. She unwrapped her shawl, running her fingers over the worn fabric as tears began to fall, silent and unchecked. Tears of relief, of lingering fear, and of gratitude so profound it ached. Outside, snow began to fall, delicate flakes dancing past her window as twilight deepened. Somewhere in that gathering storm rode Vincent Rawlins, a man who had asked for nothing yet given her everything: a chance at a future, dignity, hope. She wondered if she would ever see him again, and why the thought of never seeing him made her heart constrict in her chest. The baby kicked, strong and insistent, and Zara placed both hands on her belly. "We're going to be all right," she whispered, and for the first time in months she believed it might be true. Morning arrived with blinding brilliance, sunlight reflecting off fresh snow that blanketed Wasco. Zara woke to unfamiliar comfort, momentarily disoriented until memory rushed back the auction, Vincent Rawlins, her unexpected reprieve. She dressed carefully in her better dress, preparing to face the day and begin rebuilding her life. The hotel dining room was half full when she entered, conversations halting briefly as heads turned in her direction. Zara lifted her chin, refusing to show embarrassment. The debt was paid, her conscience clear. She had nothing to hide, Mrs. Douglas appeared at her elbow, guiding her to a small table by the window. "Coffee's fresh," she said kindly, "and I've told Cook to make you extra hot cakes. Growing a baby needs proper feeding." "Thank you," Zara said, genuinely touched by the older woman's consideration. She was halfway through her meal when the dining room door swung open, bringing a blast of cold air and the unmistakable figure of Vincent Rawlins. He paused in the doorway, scanning the room until his gaze landed on her. Something in his expression, relief perhaps, made Zara's pulse quicken. He crossed to her table, removing his hat as he approached. "Mrs. Sinclair," he greeted formally, aware of the attentive eyes and ears around them. "Mr. Rawlins," she returned, equally proper. "I thought you'd be on the trail by now. That was the plan." He gestured to the empty chair across from her. "May I?" Zara nodded, acutely conscious of the whispers their interaction was generating. Vincent sat, placing his hat on the table between them. "The weather's turned," he explained, keeping his voice low. "Pass to Jackson is snowed in. Stage driver says it might be 2 weeks before it's passable again." "I see," Zara said, trying to ignore the leap of her heart at the news. "Will you stay in Wasco then? For now, took a room here." He glanced around, then leaned forward slightly. "Truth is, I'm glad for the delay. Didn't sit right, leaving you so abruptly after everything." Zara studied him, searching for hidden meanings in his words. "You've done more than enough, Mr. Rawlins. You don't owe me anything further." "Not about owing," he replied. "About wanting to ensure you're truly all right." "Do you have plans for after?" He gestured vaguely toward her belly. The question caught her off guard. In the desperate weeks since Matthew's death, she'd been focused solely on surviving each day, unable to think beyond the immediate crisis. Now, with her debt cleared, the future yawned before her, uncertain but hers to shape. "I'm a good seamstress," she said slowly. "Before I married, I worked for a dressmaker in Denver. Perhaps I could establish something similar here. There's no proper tailor in Wasco." Vincent nodded thoughtfully. "Good thinking. Folks always need clothing, especially growing towns like this." He hesitated, then added, "I might be able to help with that." Zara's brow furrowed. "How so?" "The money I paid, it wasn't just what I had on hand. I've been doing well these past few years. My brother and we've got a successful ranch operation. I could." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "I could invest in your business, properly with papers and such. Not charity," he added quickly, seeing her expression. "An honest business arrangement." Pride warred with practicality in Zara's heart. Setting up a shop would require capital she didn't have for equipment, fabric, a storefront. Yet accepting more help from this man seemed wrong, especially when she still didn't fully understand his motives. "Why are you doing this?" she asked directly. "The truth, please. You said you knew my husband, but that doesn't explain this level of involvement." Vincent was quiet for a long moment, his gaze dropping to his weathered hands on the tabletop. When he looked up again, his eyes held a depth of emotion that startled her. "Your husband saved my life," he said quietly. "We were crossing a river, cattle drive got dangerous in high water. My horse spooked through me. I hit my head, would have drowned if Matthew hadn't pulled me out." Zara's throat tightened. That sounded like the Matthew she'd married, impulsive and flawed, but fundamentally decent and brave. "He made me promise," Vincent continued, "if anything happened to him, I'd make sure his wife was looked after. Said you were expecting. That was the last drive he ever worked." "He never mentioned saving anyone," Zara whispered. Vincent shrugged slightly. "Not the type to boast, I gathered. When I heard about his passing and then your situation, well, I had to honor that promise." The revelation settled over Zara like a mantle, heavy with implications. Her husband, for all his faults, had secured her safety in his own way. And this man, this stranger, had traveled miles in winter to fulfill a promise to a dead man. "I don't know what to say," she admitted. "Say you'll let me help you establish your business," Vincent replied. "For Matthew. And for that child who'll need a secure future." Put that way, how could she refuse? Zara nodded slowly. "Very well, a business arrangement with proper papers, as you said." Relief visibly washed over Vincent's features. "Good, that's good." He stood, retrieving his hat. "I've some errands to run." "Perhaps we could meet later to discuss details. The lobby where it's proper." 4 o'clock, Zara suggested. "And thank you, Mr. Rawlins, truly." He smiled, that transformative expression that softened his weather-beaten features. "Vince, remember, if we're to be business partners." "Vince," she echoed, the name feeling strange yet somehow right on her lips. After he departed, Zara remained at the table, her breakfast forgotten as she processed their conversation. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to imagine a future, a small shop with her name on the window, a modest home for herself and her child, security built by her own hands with this unexpected second chance. And perhaps, whispered a small voice in her heart, something more. The thought startled her, and she pushed it firmly aside. Vincent Rawlins was fulfilling a promise to her late husband, nothing more. That she found his presence comforting, his smile warming, was merely gratitude confused for something it couldn't be. Still, as she finished her meal and prepared to face the day, Zara couldn't deny the anticipation that fluttered alongside her baby's movements at the thought of their meeting that afternoon. 4 o'clock couldn't come soon enough. The next 2 weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity. True to his word, Vincent helped Zara establish the foundations of her business, finding a small storefront available for lease, purchasing a quality sewing machine and initial stock of fabrics and notions, even commissioning a painted sign that read Sinclair Fine Tailoring and Alterations. They worked together daily, their initial formality gradually giving way to comfortable companionship. Zara discovered that Vincent was not just a cowboy but a shrewd businessman with a gift for negotiation. He secured the storefront at half the asking price, convincing the owner that a respectable business would enhance the property's value. When ordering supplies from the general store, he haggled good-naturedly until the proprietor offered a standing discount for future purchases. "Where did you learn all this?" Zara asked one afternoon as they arranged bolts of fabric on newly built shelves. Vincent smiled, passing her a length of blue calico that matched her eyes. "My father was a merchant before trying his hand at ranching. Taught me that a man's word and his ability to strike a fair deal were his most valuable assets." His expression sobered slightly. "He failed at ranching, but those lessons stuck. And now you and your brother have a successful operation," Zara observed, carefully placing the fabric. "Now we do. But it took years of mistakes and hard work." He hesitated, then added, "That's partly why I understand your situation. I've been at the mercy of creditors myself, seen what it does to a person's spirit." These small revelations about his past came sparingly, like gold nuggets in a prospector's pan. Zara collected each one, piecing together the mosaic of the man who had so unexpectedly entered her life. He was 34, had fought briefly in the war before a minor wound sent him home, had tried his hand at multiple occupations before finding his calling with cattle and horses. He played chess, enjoyed poetry when he could get books, and had a dry wit that often caught her by surprise, drawing unexpected laughter from her. In turn, she shared her own story, her childhood in St. Louis, losing her parents to influenza as a teenager, moving west with her aunt and uncle who later returned east, leaving her to make her own way. She told him about meeting Matthew at a harvest dance, his whirlwind courtship, their dreams of building a life in Wyoming. "He wasn't a bad man," she said one evening as they sat in the hotel lobby, finalizing the shop's accounts. "Just restless, could never settle for what was in front of him, always looking to the horizon." "Some men are like that," Vincent replied thoughtfully. "Takes getting burned a few times to learn that what you're chasing isn't always better than what you have." Zara glanced up from her ledger, caught by something in his tone. "You sound like you speak from experience." A shadow crossed his face. "Had my share of chasing horizons. Difference is, I was lucky enough to learn before I lost everything that mattered." The depth of feeling in his voice stirred something in Zara, a warmth that spread through her chest whenever they were together. She found herself looking forward to their daily meetings, missing his company during the brief times they were apart. It was dangerous territory, these growing feelings, and she tried to attribute them to gratitude or the natural bond of friendship. But in quiet moments, when Vincent's hand accidentally brushed hers over a fabric sample, or when she caught him watching her with an expression that mirrored her own confused emotions, Zara couldn't deny the truth. She was falling for this quiet, honorable man who had asked for nothing yet given her everything. As her shop neared completion and her pregnancy advanced, Zara worried about what would happen when the pass to Jackson cleared. Vincent had already stayed longer than intended, his 2-week delay stretching to nearly a month as December deepened into January. Each morning she awoke fearing this would be the day he announced his departure. The town, meanwhile, had formed its own opinions about their relationship. Zara heard the whispers, saw the knowing glances when she and Vincent walked together through town. Mrs. Douglas had taken to referring to him as "your gentleman friend," while Sheriff Jenkins asked pointedly one day if Vincent had honorable intentions. "People will talk," Vincent said simply when Zara mentioned her concerns about gossip. "Can't control that. Only thing that matters is we know the truth of things. But what was the truth? Zara wasn't sure anymore. Their business arrangement had evolved into something neither had anticipated, hovering in an undefined space between friendship and something deeper. The question came to a head one bitterly cold January evening. They'd worked late at the shop, finalizing preparations for the grand opening scheduled for the following week. Outside, a winter storm howled through Wasco's streets, the wind driving snow against the windows in angry gusts. "We should head back before it gets worse," Vincent said, helping Zara into her coat, a new one he had insisted on purchasing when he noticed her threadbare shawl. Zara nodded, suddenly exhausted. Her back ached from standing too long, and the baby had been particularly active all day, pressing uncomfortably against her ribs. As she turned toward the door, a sharp pain lanced through her abdomen, causing her to gasp and clutch the counter for support. Vincent was at her side instantly, his face etched with concern. "What is it? What's wrong?" "Nothing," Zara tried to reassure him, though another pain gripped her almost immediately. "Just, the baby's restless tonight," his brow furrowed with skepticism. That didn't look like regular movement. He glanced at the window, where snow continued to accumulate. "Let me get you back to the hotel. The doctor's just across the street if needed." They had barely stepped onto the boardwalk when another contraction seized her, stronger than before. Zara clutched Vincent's arm, breathing through the pain as panic rose in her throat. It was too soon. She had at least a month to go by her calculations. "Hospital," she managed as the contraction eased. "Please." Without hesitation, Vincent swept her into his arms, cradling her against his chest as he navigated through the snowdrifts toward Wasco's small medical facility. Zara buried her face against his shoulder, embarrassed by her vulnerability yet profoundly grateful for his strength. "Doctor." Elliot was just preparing to leave when they arrived, but one look at Zara's condition spurred him to action. "Bring her in," he directed Vincent. "How far apart are the pains?" "About 5 minutes, I think," Vincent answered, lowering Zara carefully onto an examination table. "It's too early, isn't it? She's not due until February." The doctor gave him a sharp look. "Are you the father?" Vincent hesitated, glancing at Zara, who nodded slightly. Better to let the doctor assume than waste time with explanations. "I see," Dr. Elliot said, noting their exchange. "Well, Mr. Rawlins," "Mr. Rawlins, babies come when they're ready, not when we expect them. First, children are often unpredictable." He turned to Zara, his manner softening. "Let's have a look, Mrs. Sinclair." Vincent moved to leave the room, but Zara caught his hand. "Stay," she whispered, fear making her voice tremble. "Please." He nodded, positioning himself at the head of the table where he could maintain her privacy while offering support. As the doctor examined her, Vincent kept her hand in his, murmuring reassurances that sounded more confident than he looked. "You're definitely in early labor," Dr. Elliot confirmed after his examination. 4 centimeters dilated. The baby is positioned well, strong heartbeat. He patted Zara's arm. "I don't see any cause for concern about the early arrival. Some babies are simply eager to meet the world." Relief washed through Zara, quickly replaced by another contraction. She squeezed Vincent's hand so hard he winced, though he didn't pull away. "I'll get the nurse," Dr. Elliot said, moving toward the door. "Mrs. Peterson is on duty tonight. She's delivered more babies than I have." Left momentarily alone, Zara looked up at Vincent, seeing the worry he tried to mask behind encouraging smiles. "You don't have to stay," she told him, suddenly conscious of what she was asking. "This could take hours." "I'm not going anywhere," he replied, his voice leaving no room for argument. He brushed a strand of hair from her damp forehead with a tenderness that made her heart ache. "I'll be right here as long as you want me." "What about your reputation?" She half joked through gritted teeth as another contraction began building. Vincent's laugh was soft but genuine. "Sweetheart, I think that ship has sailed." It was the first time he'd used any term of endearment, and despite her pain, warmth bloomed in Zara's chest. Before she could respond, the door opened as Dr. Elliot returned with Mrs. Peterson, a capable-looking woman with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes. "Well now," the nurse said, assessing the situation with a practiced glance, "let's get you more comfortable, dear. This little one's coming tonight, ready or not." What followed were the most intense hours of Zara's life. The labor progressed swiftly for a first birth, each contraction stronger than the last. Through it all, Vincent remained steadfast at her side, wiping her brow with cool cloths, letting her crush his hand and speaking words of encouragement that anchored her through waves of pain. "You're the strongest woman I've ever known," he told her during a brief respite between contractions. "You can do this, Zara, I believe in you." As midnight approached, Mrs. Peterson announced it was time to push. Zara, exhausted beyond measure, didn't think she had the strength left. She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "I can't," she sobbed. "I can't do it." Vincent leaned close, his forehead nearly touching hers. "Yes, you can," he said fiercely. "You survived losing your husband. You faced that auction block with your head high. You're building a business from nothing. After all that, bringing your child into the world is just one more miracle you're going to perform." His absolute faith in her gave Zara the second wind she desperately needed. With renewed determination, she bore down, following Mrs. Peterson's instructions, as Vincent continued his steady stream of encouragement. At 12:17 a.m. on January 12, 1868, as the storm outside reached its peak, a different kind of tempest ended with the first piercing cry of Zara's son. The sound broke something open inside her, joy and relief and love rushing in to fill a space that had been hollow for too long. "A beautiful boy," Dr. Elliot announced, placing the squalling infant on Zara's chest after a quick examination. 7 pounds even and absolutely perfect. Zara gazed down at her son through tears, marveling at his tiny features, the dark hair plastered to his head, the fierce grip of his miniature fingers around her thumb. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "I've been waiting so long to meet you." When she finally looked up, she found Vincent watching them both, naked emotion written across his features, wonder, tenderness, and something deeper that made her breath catch. "Do you like to hold him?" she asked softly. Vincent's eyes widened. "I don't know how," he admitted, a rare uncertainty in his voice. Mrs. Peterson stepped in. "Nonsense, everyone can learn." She efficiently showed him how to support the baby's head and neck, then transferred the swaddled infant to his arms. The sight of her son cradled against Vincent's broad chest created a tableau Zara knew she would remember forever, this strong, gentle man holding her child with such reverent care, as if he'd been given something impossibly precious. Which, of course, he had. "What will you name him, Doctor?" Elliot asked as he completed his notes. Zara hadn't decided on a name, had been avoiding the task as if finalizing that detail would somehow jinx the pregnancy. Now, watching Vincent rock her son with natural ease, the answer came to her with sudden clarity. "James," she said. "James Matthew Sinclair." She met Vincent's gaze, adding softly, "After my father and his." Vincent nodded, understanding the significance of honoring both men, one who had given her life, one who had given her this child. "It's a good name," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Strong, honest." After the birth, Zara was moved to a small recovery room where she and the baby could rest. Mrs. Peterson insisted Vincent go home to clean up and get some sleep himself, promising to send word if anything changed. He reluctantly agreed, only after extracting a promise that he could return first thing in the morning. Alone with her son in the quiet pre-dawn hours, Zara marveled at how completely her life had transformed in just 1 month. From the brink of servitude to a new business, a new child, and perhaps she hardly dared think it a new love. For she could no longer deny what her heart had recognized weeks ago. She was falling in love with Vincent Rawlins. The realization should have frightened her. It was too soon after Matthew's death, too complicated with their business arrangement, too uncertain with Vincent's eventual return to his ranch still looming. Yet as James slept peacefully in her arms, Zara felt only a profound sense of rightness, as if the universe had realigned itself into the pattern it was always meant to follow. She dozed fitfully, waking at the softest sounds from her son. Shortly after sunrise, a gentle knock at the door preceded Vincent's entrance. He had clearly bathed and changed, his damp hair neatly combed, his clothes fresh. In his arms he carried a small wrapped package and a bunch of winter greenery that must have cost a small fortune at this time of year. "Good morning," he greeted softly, his eyes immediately going to James in his makeshift crib. "How are our patients today, Our?" The casual possessive warmed Zara more than she could express. "Better," she replied, sitting up carefully. "The doctor says we can leave tomorrow if all continues well." Vincent placed the greenery in a water glass on the bedside table, then hesitated, holding the wrapped package somewhat awkwardly. "I brought something, for James." He approached, placing the gift on the bed beside her. "It's not much, there wasn't much selection at this hour." Zara unwrapped the paper to find a small, exquisitely carved wooden horse. The craftsmanship was remarkable, each detail lovingly rendered from the flowing mane to the powerful haunches frozen mid-gallop. "It's beautiful," she breathed, running her fingers over the smooth wood. "Made by an old Shoshone man who sells his work at the general store," Vincent explained. "Thought every boy should have a horse, even if it's just a wooden one to start." The thoughtfulness of the gift brought tears to Zara's eyes. "Thank you, he'll treasure it." Vincent shifted, seeming uncharacteristically nervous. "There's something else I wanted to discuss with you if you're feeling up to it." Zara nodded, suddenly anxious at his serious tone. Vincent took a deep breath. "The pass to Jackson cleared yesterday. Stage driver brought word." Her heart sank. "Oh, I see." She looked down at the wooden horse, struggling to maintain her composure. "When will you be leaving then?" "That's what I wanted to talk about." He moved closer, perching carefully on the edge of the bed. "I've been thinking about my brother's ranch, about my place there." "It sounds like a wonderful operation," Zara said, trying to sound supportive despite the ache building in her chest. "It is, but the thing is, Zara." He paused, seeming to gather his courage. "I don't want to go back. Not permanently, not without you and James." Zara's head snapped up, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. Vincent reached for her hand, his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. "I know it's too soon. I know you're still grieving Matthew, still adjusting to motherhood. I know there are 1,000 reasons why this is crazy." His eyes, earnest and vulnerable, held hers. "But I've spent every day for a month with you, and I can't imagine spending another day without you." Zara's breath caught in her throat. "What are you saying, Vincent?" "I'm saying I love you," he answered simply, the words hanging in the air between them. "I didn't come to Wasco looking for this. I came to fulfill a promise. But somewhere between paying your debt and watching you bring your son into the world, I fell in love with your courage, your kindness, your determination." Tears spilled onto Zara's cheeks, emotions too complex to name overwhelming her. "People will talk," she whispered. "They'll say it's too soon, that I've dishonored Matthew's memory." "Let them talk," Vincent replied. "The only opinions that matter are yours and mine, and James's when he's old enough to have one." He squeezed her hand gently. "I'm not asking for an answer now, I know you need time. I just wanted you to know where I stand before I make any decisions about leaving." Zara studied his face, this man who had changed everything by asking for nothing. In his eyes, she saw the future she'd never dared imagine, not just security and stability, but partnership, respect, love. A father for her son, a husband for herself. "I don't need time," she said quietly. Vincent's expression faltered slightly. "You don't?" "No," Zara brought his hand to her lips, pressing a kiss against his knuckles. "Because I love you too. I've been fighting it, telling myself it was just gratitude or friendship or anything but what it really is. But I love you, Vincent Rawlins. I love the man who paid my debts and asked for nothing. I love the man who believes in me enough to invest in my business. I love the man who held my hand through every contraction and made me believe I could do the impossible." The smile that broke across Vincent's face was like sunrise after the longest night. He leaned forward, cupping her cheek in his palm. "May I?" he whispered, his gaze dropping to her lips. Zara nodded, her heart thundering in her chest as Vincent closed the distance between them. His kiss was gentle, almost reverent, a promise and a question all at once. She answered by sliding her hand to the back of his neck, drawing him closer as the kiss deepened into something that sent warmth cascading through her entire body. A soft cry from the makeshift crib broke the moment. They parted, both a little breathless, as James announced his hunger with increasingly insistent wails. "Duty calls," Zara said with a small laugh. Vincent stood, retrieving the fussing infant with the careful confidence he'd developed overnight. "Here you go, little man," he murmured, placing James in Zara's arms. "Your mom is right here." As she adjusted her nightgown to feed her son, Vincent respectfully turned away, moving to the window where morning light streamed through frost-patterned glass. The tenderness of the gesture, giving her privacy while remaining close, only confirmed what her heart already knew. This was the man she was meant to build a life with. "What happens now?" she asked once James was nursing contentedly. Vincent turned back, his gaze taking in the tableau of mother and child with undisguised adoration. "Well, I reckon that depends on what you want. We could do this properly, courtship, engagement, the works, or, Zara prompted when he hesitated, a smile played at the corners of his mouth. Or we could acknowledge that life's too short and unpredictable for unnecessary waiting. We could get married as soon as you're recovered, combine our business interests, and start building our future right away." The directness of his proposal startled a laugh from her. "Just like that." "Just like that," he confirmed, his expression growing more serious. "I nearly died last year, Zara. When Matthew pulled me from that river, I promised myself I wouldn't waste whatever time I had left. Meeting you, falling in love with you and that boy, it's the most meaningful thing that's ever happened to me. I don't want to waste a single day we could have together." His words resonated deep within Zara's soul. Hadn't she learned the same lesson, watching her husband's life cut short, facing the auction block, bringing her son into the world earlier than expected? Life offered no guarantees, no certainty except the present moment. "Yes," she said, the decision crystallizing with perfect clarity. "Yes to all of it, marriage, partnership, building a life together." She smiled down at James, adding softly, "The three of us." Vincent crossed the room in 2 strides, bending to kiss her again, this time with an emotion so powerful it left them both trembling. When they parted, he rested his forehead against hers, their breath mingling in the small space between them. "I promise you," he whispered, "I will spend every day making sure you never regret this decision." Zara reached up to touch his face, tracing the scar along his cheekbone with gentle fingers. "I already know I won't." Dr. Elliot insisted Zara remain in the hospital for 3 days to ensure both she and James were strong enough before releasing them. Vincent used the time to make arrangements, sending telegrams to his brother explaining his change in plans, securing a small but comfortable house for rent on the edge of town, and organizing the final details for the shop's opening. News of their engagement spread through Wasco with predictable swiftness, generating reactions that ranged from sincere congratulations to thinly veiled disapproval. Mrs. Douglas was among the first to express her support, declaring that anyone with eyes could see they were meant for each other. Sheriff Jenkins offered a gruff endorsement, telling Vincent he'd done right by the widow in more ways than one. Others were less charitable. Hastings, still smarting from the auction debacle, made pointed comments about indecent haste and questionable morals. Several of the town's more conservative matrons whispered behind fans about proper mourning periods and the suspicious timing of James's early arrival. "Let them talk," Vincent said each time Zara expressed concern about the gossip. "A month from now, they'll find something new to chatter about. A year from now, they'll swear they always knew we were perfect for each other." He was right, of course. By the time Zara's shop opened to enthusiastic patronage in late January, much of the initial scandal had already faded into acceptance. Her skill with needle and thread quickly earned her a reputation as the finest seamstress in 3 counties, drawing customers from neighboring towns who were happy to travel for quality work. They married on a bright February morning, a simple ceremony in the town's small church with James cradled in Mrs. Douglas's arms. Zara wore a dress of her own making, ivory satin with delicate embroidery at the collar and cuffs. Vincent looked almost uncomfortable in his new suit, though his discomfort vanished the moment Zara appeared at the back of the church. The love in his eyes as she walked toward him was so naked, so unabashed, that several witnesses were moved to tears. "I take you, Zara, to be my wife," he vowed, his deep voice carrying clearly through the hushed sanctuary. "To honor and cherish, to support and protect, to walk beside through all of life's joys and sorrows, for as long as we both shall live." Zara's own vows were spoken through happy tears, her hands steady in Vincent's as she pledged her heart to him completely. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Vincent's kiss was both tender and passionate, a promise of the life they would build together. The reception at the hotel was modest but joyful, the dining room decorated with evergreen boughs and winter berries. Even Hastings made an appearance, grudgingly offering congratulations before departing early. Most of the town came to wish them well, bearing small gifts and dishes for the communal table. "Mrs. Rawlins," Vincent murmured in her ear as they shared the first dance, his hand warm against the small of her back. "How does it sound?" Zara looked up at her husband. With a smile that illuminated her entire being. "Like the beginning of the best chapter of my life." Later that night, after they had settled James in his cradle in their new home, Vincent led Zara to their bedroom with gentle reverence. Their lovemaking was both tender and passionate, a physical expression of the bond that had formed between them against all odds. Afterward, lying in his arms as moonlight spilled through the curtains, Zara marveled at the journey that had brought them to this moment. "Do you ever think about that day at the auction?" she asked softly, tracing the outline of his jaw with her fingertip. "How different everything would have been if you hadn't come to Wasco." Vincent caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "I try not to," he admitted. "The thought of you being sold to someone like Peterson, separated from James." He shook his head. "Some things are too painful to contemplate even when they didn't happen." "I still don't understand how Matthew knew," Zara mused, "how he sensed he should make you promise to look after me." Vincent was quiet for a moment, his hand moving in slow circles across her bare shoulder. "I asked myself the same thing. Why me, a man he barely knew from one cattle drive?" He sighed softly. "I think maybe he knew himself better than we give him credit for, knew his weaknesses, his tendencies. Maybe making me promise was his way of trying to be the husband he couldn't consistently be in life." The insight brought fresh tears to Zara's eyes. For all his flaws, Matthew had loved her in his way. His final act had been to ensure her protection, unknowingly setting in motion the chain of events that would lead her to true happiness. "I hope he knows," she whispered. "Wherever he is, I hope he knows that his son is loved, that I'm happy." Vincent gathered her closer, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "I believe he does, and I believe he'd be glad of it." They fell asleep tangled together, the first night of their married life marking the end of one journey and the beginning of another. Spring arrived in Wasco with typical Wyoming fickleness: warm sunshine one day, snow flurries the next. Zara's business flourished beyond her initial projections, requiring her to hire an assistant, a young woman named Beth with nimble fingers and a quick mind. James grew rapidly, his dark eyes tracking movement with increasing alertness, his smiles coming more readily each day. Vincent divided his time between helping at the shop, consulting on his brother's ranch business via telegraph, and establishing a small horse trading operation that complemented their other ventures. His eye for quality horseflesh proved as sharp as his business acumen, drawing buyers from as far away as Denver. Together, they built a life rich with love, work, and community. The scandal of their hasty marriage faded entirely, replaced by admiration for their successful partnership and obvious devotion to each other and to James. Even Hastings eventually thawed, especially after Vincent steered several lucrative accounts toward his bank. On a warm day in early May, as wildflowers painted the Wyoming prairie in swaths of color, Vincent took Zara and James on a picnic outside town. He spread a blanket beneath a cottonwood tree, its fresh leaves rustling in the gentle breeze, and produced a basket filled with Mrs. Douglas's finest offerings. James, now 4 months old and developing a distinct personality, lay on the blanket between them, batting at a wooden rattle Vincent had carved for him. His laughter, a relatively new sound, delighted both parents immeasurably. "I have something for you," Vincent said after they'd eaten, reaching into his pocket. "A belated wedding gift." He handed Zara a small velvet pouch. Opening it, she gasped at the sight of a delicate gold ring set with a perfect pearl surrounded by tiny diamonds. "Vincent, it's beautiful," she breathed, running her finger over the luminous stone. "Pearls are for tears overcome," he explained, taking the ring and sliding it onto her finger alongside her simple wedding band. "For wisdom earned through hardship seemed fitting." Zara blinked back the very tears he referenced, deeply moved by the thoughtfulness of the gift. "I love it, and I love you more each day." Vincent leaned across their son to kiss her, a tender meeting of lips that conveyed everything words could not. When they parted, he wore the expression of a man who had something important to say. "What is it?" Zara prompted, recognizing the look. He took a deep breath. I've been corresponding with my brother about the ranch, Zara's heart stuttered. Oh, the operation's grown substantially. He's looking to expand eastward, establish another property. Vincent reached for her hand, his thumb rubbing across her new ring. He's asked if we'd consider managing it. Managing? Another ranch, Zara tried to process the implications. Where? About 2 days' ride from here. Good land, water rights secure, existing structures that need some work but are solid. His eyes searched hers. It would mean dividing our time, part here with the shop and horse trading, part there building the new operation. Eventually, maybe moving there permanently if it prospers. The prospect was both exciting and daunting. What about the shop? I've worked so hard to establish it. Beth's nearly ready to manage on her own with you overseeing. Vincent squeezed her hand gently. But if you don't want this, we don't do it. Simple as that. Our life here is good. More than good. Zara gazed out at the rolling prairie, considering the opportunity. A ranch of their own to manage, a new challenge to face together, a legacy to build for James and any siblings who might come along. The thought was exhilarating. What do you want? She asked, turning back to her husband. Vincent's smile was warm and certain. I want what makes you happy. That's all I've ever wanted. The simplicity of his answer, the absolute truth she read in his eyes, filled Zara with a certainty of her own. This man who had asked for nothing had given her everything: dignity, security, love, a future. Whatever path they chose, they would walk it together. I think, she said slowly, that we should visit this ranch, see it for ourselves before deciding. Vincent's face lit with pleased surprise. You'd consider it. I'd consider anything with you. Zara leaned over to kiss him again, more deeply this time, until James's insistent babbling reminded them of his presence. They laughed, breaking apart to attend to their son, who had rolled onto his stomach and was attempting to push himself up, a determined expression on his tiny face that mirrored his mother's. Look at you trying to get moving already, Vincent said proudly, supporting the baby's efforts with a gentle hand. Got adventure in your blood, just like your mama. Zara watched them together, this man and child who had become her world, and marveled again at life's unexpected turns. 6 months ago, she had stood on an auction block, her future sold to the highest bidder. Now she sat beneath a cottonwood tree surrounded by love, with possibilities as vast as the Wyoming sky stretching before her. Whatever we decide, she said softly, we decide together, that's what matters. Vincent looked up, his eyes reflecting the same wonder she felt. Together, he agreed, reaching for her hand across the small space that separated them. Always. As the spring breeze carried the scent of wildflowers and promise, Zara's fingers interlaced with her husband's, a perfect joining of paths once separate, now inextricably entwined. From the darkest moment of her life had come the brightest light, a love born of compassion, nurtured by respect, and destined to grow stronger with each passing day. In the distance, a meadowlark called its sweet, complex song, a melody of home, of belonging, of future days unfolding in their own perfect time. Zara closed her eyes, committing this moment to memory. Her son's determined grunts, her husband's strong hand in hers, the vast Wyoming sky overhead, witnessing their joy. Whatever challenges tomorrow might bring, they would face them as they had faced all others together, stronger for having found each other against all odds, grateful for the unexpected journey that had led them home to each other's hearts.